Anyway, let's read about Nabi Muhammad. At least it's interesting to read about a prophet of God. They don't say they can have 4 wives. Okay? Whenever you have 4 wives, you can treat them all. But Nabi Muhammad can have more than 4. He got 12. So I also can have more. But you can have only 2. You have only 2, I can have more than 2. So, now when I say you have 4, but he got more than 4. So I say you can have 2, I have more. Anyway, let's read. Muslim shocked at the news of that. It was therefore in Aisha's quarters, while his head lay in her lap, that the Prophet, may God's peace and blessing be upon him, chose the company of God on high. When this happened, Aisha laid his head down on a pillow and joined the other women of the house who were hearing the news and began to cry in bereavement and sorrow. The Muslims and the monks were taken by surprise by the sudden noise. In the morning they had seen the Prophet and were convinced that his health was improving. So much so that even Abu Bakr, he will be remembered, sought permission to go and visit his wife at a place called Sun, S-U-N-H. So Abu Bakr took leave of Nabi Muhammad because Nabi Muhammad is getting well. So what happened? He died in her lap, in the lap of Aisha. Probably that would be the reason. They said Aisha is his favorite wife. Because he died on the lap. Then from the lap she took her head and put on the pillow. That's probably the actual reason. Now the other thing is, if Nabi Muhammad had a favorite wife, he can eat at what? Because in Islam, you have to treat all your wives equal. There's no favoritism. But why do people write that Aisha is favorite? Well, the only reason they can think of is he died on her lap. Because maybe at the time of his death, she was, around and taking care of Nabi Muhammad. Okay? But upon his death, do you think people believe that he died immediately? This is something you must explore, and you must listen, and you must know something about it. Upon hearing the news and hardly believing it, Umar returned quickly to the Prophet's quarters. Upon arrival, he went straight to Muhammad's bed, uncovered and looked at his face for a while. He perceived his motionless and death-like appearance as a coma from which he believed Muhammad would soon emerge. Al-Mughira tried in vain to convince Umar of the painful fact. Umar, however, continued to believe firmly that Muhammad did not die. When Al-Mughira insisted, Umar said to him in anger, "You lie." Mughira is another chap we tell. Umar, you died. Oh, you tell lie. Don't say that. Umar said to him in anger, "You lie." The two went on the mosque together while Umar was proclaiming at the top of his voice, "Some hypocrites are pretending that the Prophet of God, may God's peace and blessing be upon him, has died. By God I swear." By God I swear. Wait a minute. I said, you must never swear in God's name. Remember that in fighting. But by God I swear, did not die. Umar, no? Then he is gone to join his Lord, just as Moses went before. Moses absented himself from his people 14 consecutive nights and returned to them after they had declared him dead. By God, the Prophet of God will return, just as Moses returned. Any man who dares to perpetrate a false rumor such as Muhammad's death shall have his arms and legs cut off by this hand. Who dared to say that? Nobody. At the most, the Muslims heard these proclamations. They were shocked and stupefied. If Muhammad truly died, woe unto all those who saw him and heard, who believed in him, in God, who sent him a conveyor of true guidance and religion. Their bereavement would be so great that their hearts and minds would break asunder. If on the other hand, if it were true that Muhammad had not died, but had gone to join his Lord, as Umar claimed, that was reason for an even greater shock. The Muslim should then await his return, which, like that Moses, would be all the more reason for wonder. The Muslim crowds sat around Umar and listened to him, inclined as they were to agree with him that the Prophet of God did not die. At any rate, they could not associate that with the man whom they had beheld in person alone only a few hours before, and whose clear and resonant voice they had heard pray and invoke God's mercy and blessing. No, they could not convince themselves that the friend of whom God had chosen for the conveyance of his divine message, to whom all the Arabs had submitted, and to whom Chosroes and Heraclius were also soon to submit, could possibly die. They wouldn't believe that he would die. At that time, not all had come into Islam, They could not believe that a man could die who had shown such power as had shaken the world for 20 consecutive years and had produced the greatest spiritual storm of history. No, they could not convince themselves that the friend of whom God had chosen for the conveyance of his divine message, to whom all the Arabs had submitted, and to whom Chosroes and Heraclius were also soon to submit, could possibly die. They wouldn't believe that he would die. At that time, not all had come into Islam, They are like the Chosroes and the Heraclius, they're all about to join. The women, however, were still beating their faces and crying at Muhammad's house, a sure sign that Muhammad had really died. Yet here in the mosque, Umar was still proclaiming that Muhammad had not died, and that he had gone to join his Lord as Moses had done. That those who spoke of Muhammad's death were hypocrites, who would suffer the cutting of their arms and necks by Muhammad upon his return. This is serious, That those who spoke of Muhammad's death, were hypocrites, who would suffer the cutting of their arms and necks by Muhammad upon his return. So, in other words, during Muhammad's time, also people were cut off. Yeah, no. From this is pure, simple, straightforward English. Now it says, that those who spoke of Muhammad's death were hypocrites, who would suffer cutting off their arms and necks by Muhammad upon his return. By Muhammad chopped off people's hands, cut off people's necks, by his order. In Baitiangong, you can't do these kind of things. Don't go and chop off people's hands. Except for self-defense. Except for self-defense. If you are cornered in a supermarket like Indonesia, those people come with torch, burn the supermarket. There were 250 of you inside. For goodness sake, go out and fight. Go out. At least attack those people who are holding the torch. Why must the 200 people, 50 people inside the supermarket just sit and let them burn you to death? That's not the way to die. That's the death of cowardice. If there is no way you can escape, what do? Send up people. I don't think out of 1,000 and no torch to burn this one. I don't know. First, they have to boil some petrol, yes or no? Then they light the torch. Wait, maybe 10, 20 at most. So you got 250. I'll take 10%. Out, go, out. In the supermarket, what you have? You have whiskey, brandy. Hey, put the cork, drill a hole up, make a hole, put a string there, light it up, kerosene, light it up, and then throw the whole bottle of whiskey out. Molotov. And the bottle will get burned, man. It explode, you know. Hey, this whiskey, brandy, all will explode on the brain. Or maybe inside there you have benzene, you know. You have benzene and all that. Throw! Why just sit inside and let people burn you to death? Like the stupid Indonesian Chinese lah. They all sit inside there, let the people come, torch, the whole building torch and they're all done. This thing must never happen to you, you know. You pray to God. You hear nothing except God. Come the worst, what may. You have to defend your life. You just stand there, hey, chop. They are fighting for, remember that. If a person comes to parang to chop you, then run, by all means you run. You can escape. Because there are 10 to 1, see. But if you cannot run, you are cornered, fight your way out. Fight your way out. That you can. But you cannot order someone to kill somebody, chop off his hands or his neck. In fighting too, not permissible. But these things have been happening in the Muslim world in that time, you know. But even present days, the Sunnis and the Shiites, they're killing each other. Somebody gave the orders, kill them all. Like the Shiites went to the mosque, you know, where the Sunnis were praying. They went and motorcycle with a shot machine gun. Pop, 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 pop. War, bloodshed in the mosque. My mother went off. It happened. When Muslims are killing the Muslims. We don't do this kind of things. We can sit down and talk, and then try and settle things. Not by killing. That's not a good thing. Things can be settled amicably, then we sit down, talk, settle, and everybody will be happy without killing. Whether they're Muslims or Hindus or whatever, you don't kill. But remember, you are cornered, then you are allowed to defend. In defense, you may have to kill. Yes or not? Or you prefer to stay in the house, let them burn you to death. Or you prefer to go out and fight. Which is which?
You're going to die anyway, better fight.
Better fight, I like that. I like that. You're going to die anyway, you better fight, huh? You have to be like in fighting. You're going to die anyway. You may as well fight. Don't be like the Chinese, in Indonesia, in the supermarket. 250 of them members. 200 in the supermarket. You know how many things can you have in the supermarket? Barang, knives, whiskey, brandy, turpentine, even acid, man. All these things are there, available in the supermarket. Yes, they can throw splash on the earth. I don't think 2,000 fellows are holding torch. The most 10 people holding torch. And one fellow holding the torch, and then one fellow holding the kerosene and pouring the petrol before they burn. One rush out and then were holding the petrol, kill the bugger, take the petrol and burn the boat. Why do you go out and fight? And then if they die, 10%, or 200%, 10% out, then they'll burn. If they can escape, come back, good luck. Form of maybe 100 yards. Anyone come near to 100 yards, we took a torch, go out, attack, and come back. You know, if you have a big group, about 50, and then you bring out one night, I tell you, simply chop, any chop can somebody. It's easier to fight 50 person, You're alone, armed, there are 50 of them. Even though they are armed, it's easier for you to attack all the 50. If it's smaller crowd, it's not so easy. 1 to 1, not so easy. 50, you simply, wow. What would the Muslims believe as they recovered from their severe shock? Hope began to stir within them in consequence of Umar's claim that Muhammad was to return, and soon they almost believed their own wishes. The wishful thinking had apparently painted for them the sky beautiful blue. When Abu Bakr heard, then he left his wife, he rushed back. This was Abu Bakr. As they went between believing Umar or the indubitable meaning of the women's crying, Abu Bakr heard the news and returned from Al-Sun. He looked through the door of the mosque and saw the Muslims being addressed by Umar, but he did not tarry there. He went straight to the quarters of Aisha and asked for the permission to enter. He was answered that there was no need that day of permission. He entered and found the Prophet laid down in a corner and covered with a striped cloth. He approached, uncovered the face and kissed it, saying, "How wholesome you are, whether alive or dead." He then held the Prophet's head in his hands and looked closely at the face, which showed no sign whatsoever of death's attack. Laying it down again, he said, "What would I not have sacrificed for you? The one death which God has decreed for you, as for any other man to taste, you have now tasted. Henceforth no death shall ever befall you." He covered the head with the striped cloth and went straight to the mosque where Umar was still proclaiming loudly that Muhammad had not died. The crowds made a way for him to the front, and as he came close to Umar, he said to him, "Softly, O Umar, keep silent." But Umar would not stop and continued repeating the same claim. Abu Bakr rose and made a sign to the people that he wished to address them. No one could have dared impose himself upon the congregation in such manner except Abu Bakr, for he was the ever trustworthy friend of the Prophet, whom Muhammad would have chosen from among all men. Hence it was natural that the people hastened to respond to his call and move away from Umar. After praising and thanking God, Abu Bakr delivered the following brief address. "O men, you have been worshipping Muhammad, then know that Muhammad is dead. But if you have been worshipping God, then know that God is living and never dies." He then recalled the Quranic verse, "Muhammad is but a prophet before whom many prophets have come and gone. Should he die or be killed, will you adjure your faith? Know that whoever adjures his faith will cause no harm to God, but God will surely reward those who are grateful to him." So he quoted the Quranic verse. This was the Quranic verse quoted by Abu Bakr. What does it mean? Should he die or be killed, will you adjure your faith? Know that whoever adjures his faith will cause no harm to God, but God will surely reward those who are grateful to him. All are positive, both sides positive, no negative, okay? If you adjure your faith, you do no harm to God. But God will reward those who are grateful to him. So, the stress was more on God than on Nabi Muhammad by Abu Bakr, okay? Realizing that the people withdrawing from him and going to Abu Bakr, Umar fell silent and listened to Abu Bakr's speech. Upon hearing Abu Bakr recite the Quranic verse, Umar fell to the ground. The certainty that the Prophet of God was truly dead shattered him. Beguiled by Umar's speech, the people listened to Abu Bakr's statement and to the Quranic verse as it was given to them for the first time. They had forgotten that there was any such revelation. Abu Bakr's words dissipated all doubt and uncertainty. His Quranic quotation reassured the Muslims that they are holding fast to God, who never dies, would more than compensate for Muhammad's passing. In other words, they hold fast to the Creator rather than to Muhammad. Okay? Did Umar exaggerate when he convinced himself that Muhammad had not died? When he tried to cause the people to believe likewise? The answer must be the negative. In like way, men of science tell us that the sun will continue to rise in the morning until a certain day when it will explode and disappear. Does any one of us accept such a claim without entertaining a doubt as to its validity and truth? Does not every one of us ask himself, how could the sun explode, disappear, and go away? The sun, by whose light and warmth everything in the world lives. How could it explode and disappear, and the world continue thereafter even for one day? And yet, was the light of Muhammad any less brilliant than that of the sun, or his warmth and power any less strong than those of the sun? The sun is a source of much good, but was not Muhammad the source of as much and equal good? The sun stands in communion with all beings, but was not the soul of Muhammad equal in the communion with all beings? Does not his blessed memory still feel that Umar was not convinced that Muhammad could not have died? And in truth, in one sense, Muhammad did not die and will not die. Having seen him that morning when he went to the mosque, and like all the other Muslims, having thought that the Prophet had recovered his health, Usama ibn Zayd returned to Al-Jur with those of his colleagues who had accompanied him to Medina in search of reassuring news. He ordered the army to prepare to march to Al-Sham, but before the army proceeded forth, it heard the news of Prophet's death. Usama ordered the army to return to Medina. He hung his command flag on the door of Aisha's quarters and decided to wait until the Muslims recovered from their shock. In fact, the Muslims were wondering which step to take. After hearing Abu Bakr and knowing for certain that Muhammad had died, they dispersed. Some of the Al-Ansar gathered around Sa'd bin Ubadah in the courtyard of Banu Sa'dah. Ali ibn Abu Talib, Al-Zubair ibn Al-Awam, and Talha ibn Ubadah gathered in the house of Fatima. And Al-Majurin, together with Usaid bin Hudra, as well as Banu Abu Aisha, gathered around Abu Bakr. Soon a man came to Abu Bakr and Umar to inform them that the Al-Ansar were gathering around Sa'd bin Ubadah. The informant added that the two leaders should go out and reorganize Muslim leadership before his division of the Muslim community got any worse. Since the Prophet of God, may God be peace, God's peace and blessing be upon him, was still laid out in the house and unburied, it was surely unbecoming that the Muslims begin to divide among themselves. See, and these things happen. Even before the body is buried, now people start dividing. So this is serious matter. Umar pleaded with Abu Bakr to go with him immediately to answer and see what they were doing. On the way thither, they were met by two upright and trustworthy Ansar men who, when questioned, remarked that Al-Ansar were contemplating separatist ideas. When the two Ansar men questioned Abu Bakr and Umar in turn, and learned from them that they were going to Al-Ansar's gathering, they advised them not to go, but to try to settle the Muhajirun's own affairs. Umar was determined to go, and Abu Bakr was not difficult to persuade on this point. He came to Sa'dah and found that the Ansar had gathered around a man wrapped in a blanket. Umar ibn asked who the man was, and he was told that that was Sa'd ibn Ubadah, suffering from a serious sickness. Umar and Abu Bakr, joined at this moment by a number of Muhajirin, took their seats in the assembly. Soon a speaker rose and addressed and I'll answer in the following words after praising God and thanking. We are all I'll answer. That is the helpers of God in the army of Islam. You, the Muhajirin, are only the brigade in the army. Nonetheless, a group of you have gone to the extreme of seeking to deprive us of our national leadership and to deny us of our rights. So these are two groups. One is the Muhajirun and the other one is the Al-Ansar. Actually, the complaint had always been in the Ansar's lips, and even during Prophet's lifetime. When Umar heard it being voiced again, he could hardly restrain himself. Indeed, he was ready to put an end to this situation once and for all by the sword needed, feeling that harsh treatment might aggravate rather than improve matters. Abu Bakr held Umar back and asked him to act gently. He then turned to Al-Ansar, saying, "Oh man, we, the Muhajirun, were the first men to convert to Islam. We enjoy the noblest lineage and descendants. We are the most reputable and the best esteemed, as well as the most numerous of any group in Arabia. Furthermore, we are the closest blood relatives of the Prophet. The Quran itself has given us preference, for it is God, may He be praised and blessed, who said, first and foremost were all Muhajirun, then Al-Ansar, and then those who have followed these two groups, virtue and practice. We were the first to emigrate for the sake of God, and you are literally Al-Ansar, that is the helpers. However, you are our brethren in religion, our partners in the fortunes of war, and our helpers against the enemy. All the good that you have claimed is truly yours, for you are the most worthy people of mankind, but the Arabs do not and will not recognize any sovereignty unless it belongs to the tribe of warriors. The princes shall be from among us, whereas your group will punish the viziers. At this, a member of Al-Ansar became furious and said, "Rather am I, the experienced warrior, on my arm. Every verdict shall rest, and my verdict is that the people of Quraysh may have their claims as long as we too may have our own." Abu Bakr repeated his proposition that the princes of Muslims must be of the Quraysh, whereas their viziers must be of Al-Ansar, taking the hand of Umar ibn Khattab, as well as that of Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah, who was sitting on either side of him. Abu Bakr said, "Either one of these two men is acceptable to us as leader of the Muslim community. Choose whomsoever you please." So anyway, what we have read and what we have gone through all this, in short, immediately after Nabi Muhammad's death, they want to clinch the leadership. Why? Why? Because there was no preparation. Then in fighting things, you have the elders. We have said the button holders, elders, and they shall continue. There shall not be fight for leadership and all that. In fighting, at least we have these things laid down. Unlike Nabi Muhammad in his death, there was no specific orders to show this. At that moment, all the men present began to talk at the same time, and the meeting itself was on the verge of listening. With his usual clear and loud voice, Umar said, "Oh, Abu Bakr, stretch forth your hand, and I will give you my oath of fealty. Did not the Prophet himself command you to lead the Muslim in prayer? You therefore are his successor. We elect you to the position. In electing you, we are electing the best, all those whom the Prophet of God loved and trusted." Umar's words touched the hearts of the Muslims present, as they were truly expressed the Prophet's will up to and including the last day of his life. On that day, they had witnessed his insistence that Abu Bakr lead the prayer, even the presence. Thus, the difference between the Muhajirun and Al-Ansar was dissolved, and members of both camps came forward to give the oath of fealty, loyalty, loyalty to Abu Bakr. On the following day, Abu Bakr took his place at the pulpit of the mosque. Umar ibn Khattab rose before the congregation, said after offering due praise to God, "Yesterday I presented to you a noble idea. I drew it neither from the book of God nor from any memory I have the prophet of God. It just occurred to me that the prophet of God would continue with us in this world forever, and it would survive us all. But now I know better. God has left us his holy book, the repository of his prophet's guidance. If we hold closely to it, God will surely guide us to the same felicity to which he guided his prophet. God has consolidated you together under the leadership of the best man among you, and not company of prophet of God. May God's peace and blessing be upon him, who was blessed but by God with the honor of the prophet's company in the cave when the Makkans were following the girl's pursuit. Rise and give him your oath of fealty." All the men rose and pledged their loyalty to Abu Bakr. That was the public fire, following the private fire in the conduct of Banu Salah. So Abu Bakr became the leader after Nabi Muhammad's death. But one thing, Abu Bakr was a modest man, I says. Not what he says, "I may not be the best among you. If I do well in my job, help me. If I do wrong, redress me. Truthfulness is fidelity, and lying is treason. The weak shall be strong in my eyes, until I restore them their lost rights. And the strong shall be weak in my eye, until I have restored the rights of the weak from them. No people will give up fighting for the cause of God, but God inflicts upon them abject subjection, and no people give themselves to lewdness, but God envelopes them with misery. Obey me as long as I obey God and his prophet. But if I disobey God's command or his prophets, then no obedience is incumbent upon you. Rise to your prayer. God may bless you." So, that is how he came and took over. You can say that after Nabi Muhammad was Abu Bakr. But did he have a dual sight? A definite dual sight? That is also very important. Let us read about this. Whether people have the dual sight. Throughout the Muslim disputing the question of succession at the courtyard of Banu Saida and in the mosque, the Prophet's remains were lying on his bed. The Prophet's remains was still there, It's quite some time now, after his death. After they saw Abu Bakr, the people came to the Prophet's house to prepare for his funeral and funeral. There was disagreement as to where the Prophet was to be buried. Some Muhajirin advised that he ought to be buried in Makkah, his native town, in the proximity of his own relatives. Others advised that he ought to be buried in Jerusalem, where the prophets were buried before him. The latter was certainly a baffling view, considering that Jerusalem was in the hands of the Byzantines, and the relations between them and the Muslims were most hostile, especially since the Mu'tah and Tabuk campaigns. Indeed, an army which the Prophet himself had mobilized and placed under the leadership of Usama was supposed to fight them and avenge the Muslims' defeat at those campaigns. At any rate, the proposals to bury the remains in Mecca or in Jerusalem were both open. So they were not thinking of where to bury him. Jerusalem. Anyway, Jerusalem is our, because the people who were in Jerusalem were the Byzantines, and they were against the Muslims. They thought that the most appropriate place was either the very spot of ground where the pulpit stood or the spot next to it. The opinion, however, did not meet with approval. Aisha had related that in his last days, Whenever his pain increased, the Prophet used to uncover his face to curse such people as had taken the grave of their prophets as places of worship. Abu Bakr solved the issue when he proclaimed that he had heard the Prophet say that the Prophet should be buried wherever they died. The opinion carried the day. Maybe he goes back and says, Abu Bakr said, I heard he say that wherever the Prophet died, there he buried him. So, washing the Prophet's body before burial was performed by his next of kin, by Ali ibn Abu Talib, Al-Abbas ibn Abul Talib, and his two sons, Al-Fadil and Qutb, as well as by Usama ibn Zayd. Usama ibn Zayd and Shukran, the Prophet's client, poured the water while Ali washed the body, covered as it was by Muhammad's nightgown. It was decided that the Prophet's body should not, under any circumstance whatever, be fully exposed, as they performed their washing contrary what usual. In each cases, the body emitted beautiful smells, so that Ali said continually, by God, what would I give for you, for how sweet you are and how wholesome you are, both alive and dead. Some Western Orientalists sought to explain this fair scent emitted from the body of the Prophet by calling it the result of the perfume which he used so lavishly. Remember that he once declared it one of the good things truly loved in this world. When the washing was completed, the Prophet's body was wrapped in towels, two made in Shuha and the third in Ibra and in Yaman. When this operation was completed, the body was left where it was and doors were flung open for the Muslims to enter from the mosque, take the last look at their Prophet and to pray for him. Undoubtedly, he emerged deeply moved and conscious of the terrible bereavement. The room was practically full when Abu Bakr and Umar entered the room and joined the Muslims in a funerary prayer for the Prophet. The prayer was performed without a leader. When it was over, Abu Bakr began to pray aloud, saying, Peace, mercy, and blessings of God be upon you. O Prophet of God, we witness that the Prophet of God and his apostle conveyed the message entrusted to him by his Lord, and that he exerted himself and fought in his cause until God gave victory to his religion. We equally witness that the Prophet of God and his apostle fully performed his promise, and that he commanded us to worship none but God alone, who has no associates. At the end of every praise, the Muslims responded together, Amen, Amen. When this prayer was complete, the men left, and the women and children took turns, but taking a last look at the Prophet. One and all, every man, woman, and child, emerged from the room torn with sorrow and crushed by the sense of bereavement for the cross of the Prophet of God, the seal of his apostles. They were full of apprehension that some calamity might befall the religion of God in the future. They even thought of calamity in the religion of God in the future. That's why the Muslims were so many Islam, 70 old groups. Who knows what group they belong to? Malaysia? You must know, you know. You cannot say you don't know. Malaysia? The Muslims belong to the Sunnis, correct. Sunnis, correct. If the Shiites were to come in, what happened? They jail them. They will, I think they will allow them to come, but not allowed to preach. Okay? They start preaching, they'll be conflict. You know? No man can today reconstruct the 13th century old scene of his imagination without being filled with awe and reverence. The inquisition viewed the body laid down in the corner of the room, which was to become a grave the following day, and which until the day before the bravery buried with Muhammad's vitality, mercy, and light to fill the hearts of the faithful mourners with apprehension. It could not have been otherwise. For there lay the man who had called the man to truth, the path of righteousness, and instruct them the highest example of goodness, mercy, courage, chastity, purity, and justice. As the crowds of Muslims pass by that year, there's often disheartened and dispirited every man, woman, and child. Among them saw the body that lay motionless, before him, his own father, brother, friend, trustworthy companion, prophet, and apostle of God. To recall that hour is surely to reconstruct a pathetic scene, given as he writes of the this order is seized by the grip of its terror and can hardly overcome the consequences. Confusion and men of little faith. It was natural that the Muslims to be apprehensive to the future. Indeed, as soon as the news of Prophet's death spread in Medina and reached the Arab tribes in the surrounding area, Jews and Christians sprang to their feet. Hypocrisy took a new lease of life, and the faith of many weak Arabs fell into confusion. The Makkans sought it to endure Islam, and they did so to the extent of instilling fear in Atab ibn Asid, their governor appointed by the Prophet to rule them. Soon Hanyal ibn Amir, following the news of the Prophet's death, stood up in their midst and said, "The Prophet's death shall increase the power of Islam and strengthen it. Whoever attacks us or adjures our cause, we shall strike with the sword." We strike with the sword. Okay, who adjures? Want to leave Islam? Strike with the sword. But Baitiangong peace, if the fellow leave, Baitiangong say thank you. Remember that, huh? What do you do? That's not less problem for you, lah. You don't have to attend the funeral. You don't have to kneel down and pray for him. Yes or not? Why strike with the sword? Say thank you. Only strike with the sword, okay? But here he said, don't strike with the sword. O people of Makkah, you were the last to enter Islam. Do not therefore first to desert it. Have faith that God will bring you final victory, just as the Prophet of God, may God's peace, blessing be upon him, has promised you. Only then did the Makkans change their minds. Otherwise, they won't change their mind, but even if they don't change, solve. Now, another dilemma. Now, how to dig the grave? But there was no specific instruction. So ours go nice. Dig, crematorium, burn, take the ashes, throw it to the sea. The Prophet's Bureau. The Arabs knew two ways of digging graves. The Makkans made their graves flat at the bottom, while the Madinis made them curved at the bottom. Okay. Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah was the grave digger for the Makkans land. And Abu Talib Zaid ibn Zal was grave digger for the Madinis. So there, grave digger for the Madinis, grave digger for the Makkans, grave digger. The Makkans one, the Madinis one, curve. So which do you prefer, curve or flat? Did you choose by fate, by chance, or by what? Okay. Anyway. The Prophet's relatives could not choose between them. The Prophet's relatives cannot choose between them. So the Prophet's relatives were around. Why? One curve, one flat. Some must have put up there. One curve, one say one flat. So they cannot decide. Surely one say flat, one say curve, so what to decide? The Prophet's uncle Al-Abbas sent two men to call the two grave diggers for consultation. Only one was found. Lucky. Only one was found and could respond to the call, and that was Abu Talha. He was therefore commissioned to dig grave for the Prophet of God as he knew best. When evening came and the Muslims taken leave of the body of the Prophet, Muhammad's relatives prepared for the burial. They waited until a quarter or third of the night was passed before proceeding with the burial. In the grave, they spread out great mantle that once belonged to the Prophet, and the men who had washed the body lowered it to its last repose. They built over it a bridge, with bricks. And then covered the grave with sand. Aisha said, "We did not learn of the burial of the Prophet of God May God peace and blessing be upon him until midnight or later. And so did Fatima report. The Prophet was buried Tuesday night, 14, Rabbi 1, 2 days after his death, in the year 10 AH. This is a Muslim year, 10 AH. So now is 14 what? 1, huh? That is 141, I see the calendar. Aisha lived there after in her quarters next door to the Prophet's grave, contented with her proximity, his holy precinct. When Abu Bakr died, he was buried in the immediate vicinity of the Prophet's grave, as was Umar ibn Khattab, therefore. It's related that Aisha used to visit the grave room without veil until Umar was buried therein. During the time, he contained only the grave of a father and a husband. But after Umar's burial, she entered the room only when fully veiled. So in the olden days, there was no veil, you know. Aisha entered the grave. After Umar's death, then only she started praying. Because Umar is not related. Abu Bakr is fathers and husbands. Aisha lived thereafter in the quarters next door to the Prophet's grave, contented with approximately his holy precinct. Okay, when Abu Bakr died, he was buried in the immediate vicinity of the Prophet's grave, as was Umar ibn Khattab thereafter. It is written that Aisha used to visit the grave room without veil until Umar was buried there. During the time, it contained only the grave of her father and husband. So Abu Bakr is the father and a husband. But after Umar's burial, she entered the room only fully veiled. So anyway, this is the Prophet Muhammad's death. So all three were buried there. So Abu Bakr, I'm sure he did not die there. Must have died somewhere to take and buried there. Umar also must have died somewhere and they are buried there. And that was the context to where Aisha was staying. Buried there. But at least now you know Aisha, Nabi Muhammad died in the lap of Aisha. So Aisha must be really taken care of. I don't understand here that they say Islam has never taken anything by the sword. But here, there, earlier we talked about sword. There remains the last sentence of Washington's Irving statement. It is that by which the best intends us that which it had better indeed itself, namely the sword. The crime is indeed that of the Western world, not ours. It is its stone of shame, the sinister, with which will finally destroy its false pride and civilization. Ivan says that the crescent has waned before the cross and exists in Europe, where it was once so mighty, only by the sufferance of rather the jealousy of the great Christian powers. Probably here long to furnish another illustration that they take the sword shall perish with the sword. They that take the sword shall perish with the sword. This verse of the New Testament Ivan directs accusing toward Islam in the name of Christian. How strange! Perhaps Irving might have had some excuse had he heard this accusation 100 years or years ago, when imperialism of the West, as we like to call it, or of Christendom, as Irving likes to call it, had not reached the terrible degree of greed and covetousness, of compressed and aggression by the sword, which it has reached today. When Field Marshal Allenby captured Jerusalem in 1918 in the name of the Allies, he made this terrible proclamation, standing on the steps of the Dome of the Rock. Today, the crusades have come to an end. Dr. Peterson Smith, in his book on the life of Jesus, wrote, this capture of Jerusalem was indeed an eighth crusade in which Christianity had finally achieved its purpose. And it may even be true to say that the capture of Jerusalem was not a purely Christian effort, but that it was equally the effort of the Jews, who used the Christians in order to realize the old diaspora dream of making the land a promised a national home for the Jews.